as is usually the case when we come together to eat. But how often do we ask ourselves, this thing that we are eating, where did it come from? What has been put on it? Are we actually safe? Now, those sentiments are wrapped around the conversation that we will be having this hour. And our guests are already seated in the hot seats. Harun Warui is the program lead at Heinrich Boell Foundation and program coordinator, Route to Food Initiative. And Sylvia Kuria is a farmer in Limuru and the owner of Sylvia's Basket. And we're having a conversation today about clean eating, possible dangers in the food that we eat. Karibu sana, both of you, to the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And before we start looking into what could be lurking in our cabbage, how about we welcome you to today's program with a proverb.
So we want to welcome them with the proverb that is lurking as well, is it?
Is it still lurking?
No,
or is it front and center?
We actually have it here.
Okay.
A bad man does not lack qualities which are pleasing to him. Bad person, everybody agrees person very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
Does that person agree with everybody that they are bad?
What do you think, Sylvia? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so basically, a bad man is not able to have the power of introspection. So he's not able to look within himself and see that maybe some things that he's doing are not that good. And yeah, as you said, that also has to do with our food. You know, are we really introspecting? Do we sit down and ask ourselves, what is this I'm eating? Is it safe? Is it good? How was it produced? So we have to ask ourselves some questions.
Look inward. Okay. What about you, Harun?
In fact, this drives me to one of the forward WhatsApp I got from one of my colleagues in the office. Her name is Ducky. And she provoked me because I'm a farmer. And she asked me, she said she forwarded this quote or text saying that farmers, we are busy or struggling farming and producing some farm produce that is considered to be toxic by the consumers. So we might say that in a way, what you could be doing, you could not be conscious. You could be a bad man, like you've said. And we are not, are we conscious of ourselves as farmers? And it's a big question when we look at farming and producing safe food. That is the consumer blaming the farmer, or is the farmer blaming the person who provides the inputs?
Well, okay. I guess that's the place to then jump onto them. And interesting revelations on how this proverb resonates with you. And then maybe that gives us a stepping stone into the conversation this morning. Sure. There seems to be something that has folks worried. You know, knickers are in a bunch over the quality of food that we are consuming. And not just the quality, but is it dangerous food? And we can't put a blanket statement on all the food that we consume. But there's a cause for concern, it would appear. Sylvia, what's wrong?
I think, like we've had a number of reports, like over the years about the safety of our food and whether it's really good for human consumption. So we've had issues about meat, we've had issues with milk and even vegetables. So like Heinrich Boell Foundation actually has put together, a pesticide report, like a report dubbed Toxic Business. And, it's out of a research that was done in 2020. And it's very clearly showing that, the 5 major crops that we are consuming, which is the maize, potatoes, tomatoes, coffee, and wheat. We are using a lot of inputs, synthetic inputs. And unfortunately, 76% of those inputs are actually classified as highly hazardous. So there's a real concern, that this report is actually showing that, our staple foods, are actually being doused with a lot of poison that is not necessary.
Oh, okay. Shall I first or you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So when we say inputs, poisons, in what form do they then come in contact with the food? when it's being grown, at the points of what happens? What's going on?
So it's in different forms. Sometimes it's actually being grown because some of these inputs are actually put on the seed. Say, for example, when you go and buy seed from the agrovet, maybe you're buying your seed of maize or beans, it normally has a fungicide or, some chemicals like put on the seed or pesticides to keep away the pests.
Okay.
A pesticide. So basically, when you plant it already, the seed already is coated in pesticide. And then now, when the farmer is growing the food, they normally would have some different challenges. So they would have maybe pests, that are going to that affect the crops, or maybe they need to get rid of the weeds. So they normally would spray a herbicide, or they need to manage, some diseases. So they would use a fungicide. So what happens is, all the way from when you're planting the seed to when it's going to the market, it's being doused in a lot of chemicals.
Let me ask this question. It appears to me, we have a crop, we have grain.
Yes.
To keep it safe, we coat it with, what did you call it?
With some pesticides.
Pesticide.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when we plant it, then what do we do again?
Now after,
we add?
So now after 3 weeks of planting, you're going to have a lot of weeds.
Okay, so you
use spray a herbicide.
A herbicide?
Yes, now to get rid of the weeds.
Not a weedicide.
No, herbicide.
Okay.
Not today.
Herbicide.
So you spray a herbicide.
Yes, and then after
about 4 or 5 weeks, you're going to start noticing some doo-doos or some issues with your crops. They have some insects here and there. Then you spray a pesticide.
But then I thought the herbicide, what is the herbicide supposed to do?
Herbicide is weeds.
Kill the weeds.
It's
a
weed killer.
And then, so when we see the doo-doos, now we spray something to kill the doo-doos.
Exactly. Now you have to spray again a pesticide. And remember disease, we've not got to the disease part.
Okay, so for disease, what do we spray?
You spray fungicide.
Okay, we spray fungicide.
Yeah, now when you have bacterial problems or whatever,
all right.
Now you spray fungicide.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. I'm going to suspend my thoughts on the subject for the moment, but I'm going to ask this question.
Yeah.
So before fungicide, herbicide, pesticide, weedicide, before all these sides came into being, people had crops.
Exactly.
What did they do? Because they harvested.
Yes.
They ate.
We ate. We did not die.
Yeah.
What did they do beyond just drying these things? What did they do?
They were just growing food as nature intended.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Were weeds there? Yes.
Were
pests there?
Yeah.
Yes. So these weeds and pests also play a role.
Exactly.
And it's not all negative, is it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So essentially what I've just heard is that there is a business somewhere.
Of course, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who have guaranteed they will stay in business.
Exactly.
Okay? They offer you a protection which then requires another protection.
Exactly.
And which requires another protection and which requires another protection. So you have this chain of additives that you're always being told are necessary.
Yeah.
And then now you're being told these things are actually poison. And then somebody else is going to come and say, okay, now for that poison which we brought to you in this form, we have something else that can help solve the problem.
And sometimes it's the same person who is actually going to poison you your whole life, then you're going to fall sick and still give them money so that you can
Yes, because they have a cousin who is part of the business who now has the medicine that you require.
Yeah.
So when you hear there's an increase in this disease and that disease and the other disease, and many of them are being caused by these very same things that we're discussing. Okay. So where are these things manufactured?
Let Harun tell us.
In fact, I just want to.
You guys.
I want to come in here, and you have brought a very good narrative whereby we cannot just despise in totality the interrelationship within a farming system of all these kind of what we call pests, what we call weeds,
disease,
because there is that kind of synergy, a synergistic relationship between the soil and the crops and this diversity species that we see of both insects and plants. What we are saying is that when we think about industrial farming, our aim or the aim has been just the element of increased production. But we want to put here and this to go in record, that when we are thinking about food production and food security in this country, it's not just about the amount of food we get. We should also be thinking about both safety and also the what we call the nutrient dense food. We want to get food that is dense in its nutritive value. So, looking at this element, what Sylvia has brought is a very good concept. From the stage of planting to the stage of managing the crop and also post-harvest, let's look at the whole of that value chain and ask ourselves, are we going for food that is dense when it comes to nutritive value, or we are just producing food that might be empty in quotes in terms of its nutrients?
What would be your answer from
now,
what you've seen?
Of what I'm saying is this, that when you do this kind of intercropping, when you can manage even this weed by bringing other crops, or you can manage this insect by bringing other crops that are beneficial to us. Let me give you a very nice example. I used to see in my village a neighbor who was a very old lady. She used to intercrop onions, and she will not remove what we call the Mexican marigold, called it mofangi, because these are repellents for the insects that feed on those crops.
So the weed was the repellent.
You get, but when we were taught the element of large-scale farming in quotes, because even small-scale farmers now have adopted some of this mechanism, is we have dropped in totality that kind of intercropping or miscropping, and that's what we are promoting. Just to answer your question, the element, what do we do? What we are calling for is integrated pest management, and we are not going for control, we are going for management.
But so I would ask, why did we see the massive drop of using these weeds, which serve as, they could be called weeds or other plants, that serve as insect repellents, knowing full well their benefit?
Yes.
Why was that dropped? Was that persuasion to
before
use the
Sylvia
chemicals?
comes, because she has got a very good narrative. I've been listening to her, and she can explain that very well, because she's practicing it. But I want to put it this way, that when we embraced in totality, and we are shown that ours is bad, industrial farming practices are good. And this also comes from even our education. What we are trained, the curriculum that we get in our university need to be changed to embrace our indigenous farming practices. That I saw this grandmother integrating onions, integrating Mexican marigold, mofangi, and other crops. You could see doricals throughout the year, sweet potato. This kind of integration also enhances diversity of food. You know, when we are looking the element of ensuring the right to food, we are looking that diversity, we are looking the element of intercropping. And now just to answer your question, what we need to do, we are saying let the synthetic pesticides, or when we use pesticide, be the last resort. You get? And we are talking about what we call the integrated pest management that brings about our indigenous farming practices, that discourages monocropping, that promotes intercropping, mixed cropping, use of biopesticides, the fermented concoctions that we get from our farmers, and that calls for what we are saying, control. You are not, management. You are managing this element of pest, but not always controlling with pesticides.
Okay, so Sylvia, why and how can this work today? And can it work large scale when you talk about then using what you would find in nature to eventually do what the synthetic elements do?
Yeah, so basically, we always get the question, can organic feed the world? But I always ask, has conventional farming fed us? It's not been able to feed us. It has actually degraded our soils. It has made us sick. And I'm not saying that it's all bad, but I just find that, we have to look for balances in which we can actually be able to make sure that we can grow, large-scale, organic, safe produce. And this is possible, Like one of the things I always say is that, first start working okay, first wait, let me go back a little. Statistics show that 80% of all the food we consume is from smallholder farmers. It's not the large-scale farmers who are feeding us. It is the smallholder.
Farmers normally produce for export.
Exactly.
And for business.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the smallholder farmers are feeding us. So why do we say that then organic or sustainable farming or using agroecology is not able to feed us? It means that we're not able to reach the farmers. And one of the recommendations in the toxic business report is that farmers don't have access to knowledge. We are not, we're not informing them, because when the pesticides came in, it looked like the new, improved, better way to farm. And it made it look like, okay, fine, why do you have to struggle, like keeping banana peels and leaves rotting the whole month to get compost, and yet you have some little pellets that you can just drop into the soil, and they're going to give you all the fertility that you need. So it looked like the improved way of farming, and farmers ran to that and they said, you know what, let's do this. 25, 30, 40 years, because, fertilizers were actually brought in actively, I think, in the early 80s. So 40 years later on, our soils are acidic. Like 80% of our soils in Kenya are acidic. They're not able to produce enough food. Like, talk to anybody, even now, 5-10 years ago, 1 acre of land was giving me this amount of produce. The produce has come down considerably by like 70%. They're producing now 30% what they were producing before. So basically,
and it's because whatever it is, the nutrients in the soil have been eroded.
Of course. And now some farmers cannot grow anything without fertilizer. Must. That's why we're really pushing.
The health
That's
of the
why we are
soil
pushing.
has been messed up.
And you've also killed the soil microbiology.
Exactly.
The microbiome, he made a point there, and let me just jump on that.
Yes, please do.
He said that we're eating empty food. We really are.
Yeah.
Because you can actually have a carrot grown conventionally, but then if you're to get the vitamins and all the benefits of that carrot, if you're to eat one that has been grown using safe farming, you have to eat like 15 carrots of the conventional to match one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the food that we are eating, or the food that's being grown, and the food that we are consuming, in terms of value, is wanting. How do we know this? If I walk to the market and I'm buying something, how do I pick up a carrot, or how do I pick up a bunch of spinach and know, well, okay, this is lacking in the nutrients because of how it was grown? How do you do that?
Good question. Now, it's indeed a challenge, because we need to appreciate that the food we have, the food we eat, is grown in a manner that is healthy for consumption. So it's a hard question to do it. But for example, like the Sylvia basket, what Sylvia is doing, she's able to aggregate food that is safe, food that has been grown organically, and she's able to meet the market and to meet the demand. So what I would say is that it is a transformative change whereby we will move on as a country to be able to embrace food that has been grown in a very safe and sustainable manner, that embrace the principles of agroecology, food that is grown in a manner that we can all appreciate that it's safe. So for now, actually, it's a challenge, because me and you will go to supermarket. We have no control measures on what we are going to buy in terms of quality, in terms of safetiness, when it comes to health issues. So it's still a challenge. And this way we are saying that we need to create more awareness among our farmers, and also look at what incentivizes them to embrace growing of food that is safe in principle. Yeah.
So Sylvia, we have you here, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay, now you.
I feel like you're going to put me on the spot here.
Yes, I am.
He's already raised the knife. You're on the chopping board.
I know, but I'm actually on the chopping board.
No, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I just want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you produce safe food, and someone asks you to provide evidence as to the safety you claim, How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so basically we have systems and mechanisms because, we can't just have hearsay or just speak to it. So we basically work with different organizations. So we have different ways in which we can actually be able to make sure our food is certified as safe. So one way that works very well for farmers is we normally train the farmers through an organized forum, which is known as Kilimo Hai. Kilimo Hai means safe organic produce. So we normally get groups of farmers, we train them for about 2 years, and then after that we take them through a group certification, which we call participatory guarantee systems, and we partner with different organizations. I know I think here in the hot seat you've actually had someone from KOAN, which is the Kenya Organic Agriculture Network. Mm-hmm. So we work very closely with them and different like organizations like Heinrich, Boell, Pelham Kenya. We have different organizations.
See, what I'm asking is, how do we certify that when all these certified organizations have certified that what you're doing is organic?
Exactly.
If I were to get someone independent of all these groups, how do I guarantee that they will come up with the same results and say that, yes, indeed, it is safe? Or are we saying that because these organizations who are known have said it is safe, so we must therefore assume and take it for granted that it is safe?
No, we actually also have third-party certification, which we also use. So we actually have independent private people who are able to actually go out, meet the farmers, and make sure that what they're doing is the right thing. Okay. So you find that, you can't just stand up and speak. Okay. You actually must
do we have a national body, like say Kenya Bureau of Standards, in the agricultural sector, that can play that oversight role in determining that these organic products are indeed organic and that they are indeed as nutritious as they claim? Because without a watchdog body that sort of like speaks to the standards and holds those who are in that particular market accountable to those standards, without it being there, good as what you're doing is, there will always be rogue elements who come in to claim that their produce
is good,
they meet the standards, and yet nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, let me just say something there. And that's what I wanted just to mention. Like, we have serious policy gaps because, some of these things cannot be implemented unless we have a favorable policy environment. And what we have been doing and trying to work with the government is that we normally, we went to the Ministry of Agriculture and we asked them, what do you have in place to make sure that even as a ministry, you're actually able to check on the safety of food? They sent us to Ministry of Health. And Ministry of Health told us, now you're going to work with the Department of Public Health. Now, when you go to Department of Public Health, when they say now they're giving the babies the polio, whatever, they're doing, polio vaccines, they have so many other things. Safe food is at the back of the list. And so it becomes a place whereby now we only have to work with private institutions, and which is not very sustainable, and it's not able to actually affect or like support the majority of farmers in the country.
There's this organization called CALRO.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Research Institute.
It used to be CARI, then there was ILRI, but now it's CALRO. All right? They're a research organization.
They are.
They are the sort of institution that would have the wherewithal to do this thing that we are speaking of. Where do they come in?
It's bureaucracy. They're nowhere. Because we've asked, but they still send us back to Ministry of Health, and we have to go to Public Health. Because they say public health are the people who are in charge of the health of people. And then also, please note, we are dealing with double standards here. Because I think there was a bill, like there was a food safety bill or policy that was actually passed, I think, if I'm not wrong, in 2021 by KEFIS. And the only reason KEFIS actually came up with that policy was because the countries where we export to, especially in the EU, said that unless you have a food safety bill that follows this like recommendations or whatever, we will not import food from Kenya anymore. So they did a bill specifically, a policy, a food safety policy, specifically for export. So we went to KEFIS and told them, well enough, good, you're doing it because we're getting some market out there. What about us? They still sent us back to Ministry of Health, Public Policy.
That's very interesting. Health. Yeah. Because I think about CALRO, and I think
double standards.
This is the organization who have brilliant minds and also have the mandate to provide this kind of information for the country. This is the same organization that came up with the blight potato, the blight-resistant and drought-resistant potato. This is the same organization who, if you walk into the doors, will tell you, this is how you can make up feed for your animals, and this is what you should be putting into them. This is the same organization who says the makeup of water in this area will not allow you to grow this crop. So it befuddles me then that we have a situation whereby the food that we are consuming is not up to scratch, literally, but that an organization which has the mandate to do this very same thing is not involved in the conversation.
Let me come in there and say that personally, I do appreciate the research that goes on at the Kenya Agriculture Research Institute.
Yeah.
But because if you look at the kind of scientists that in KALRO, we have got highly trained and competent researchers.
Yes.
And also on food nutrition, they are there. What I would really, my concern is what Sylvia brought, that as a country, we need to embrace the element of agroecology, for example, both principles and practice that will support the realization of safe food.
Okay.
Now, under the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm glad that we now have the agroecology strategy that is being worked on. And what I would really request is that our policymakers, our politicians who we listen to, need to be really embracing some of these initiatives that are going on at the technical level. Because we could be having a double speak, whereby we, at the technical level, these issues are being done, but they are not being amplified. Because we as the common mwananchi at the grassroots, we listen to our political leaders at the grassroots level. So how do they resonate? Our parliamentary, because, for example, we have got the food and, I think it's a food and feed safety bill that is going on. I don't know if it has been tabled. I need to follow up on that. But you see, these are initiatives that we need to look at under which lens are these bills looking at when they are being pushed? Are they promoting the practices and the principles that are going to help us to realize, or are we at the tail end of the value chain? For example, you have a product, you say, I want to see how safe it is, but have you looked at how it has been produced?
The role of politicians in this country is always a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
When you're talking about policies, politicians don't produce policies, they make laws. Policies are made by experts, and they tend to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, politicians will speak to the policies that we are speaking of, but as I said, it's double-edged.
Yeah.
There's what they think the masses want to hear. There's what they think will promote their own interest. And very rarely is it something that they're actually doing for the common good.
Yeah.
Now, what we're discussing here is something that is at the center and at the heart and center of our livelihood.
Yeah.
Heart and center.
Absolutely.
Okay? If one went to the Ministry of Agriculture, you would find policy papers that speak to the very thing we're talking about here. We have those in an abundance. There's no question about it. It's like we archive them for other people to come and take and borrow and implement and make success out of. The issue here is the silo mentality, where Sylvia and her group go to the parent Ministry of Agriculture and the can is kicked down the road and they end up in the Ministry of Health. And I'm wondering, Ministry of Health, do you have a situation where you go to the Ministry of Health and they take you to the Ministry of Agriculture to have a problem solved? You see, yes, they could. When you're talking about public health, you're talking about nutrition.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
But then, how is it that something that is this crucial and something that is very, very doable with an organization that is at the heart of it and has done wonderful research work? Do you know that the grass or the hay that cows eat in Australia and Brazil, that very variety that is so much in demand was actually homegrown and invented here?
That's the kind of science we have.
Yeah,
top-notch scientists.
This thing we're speaking of, where all we require is these scientists to tell us that, look, everything that has been said is verifiable because this is what we've done locally. That's it. So that even when we have a stamp of approval from KEBS, we know that, you know something, this thing is actually safe. Not complicated. We are not importing the scientists. We're not importing the technology they need. We actually already have it. You see, this is my concern. So you have the capacity to do it. It's not being done. That is really it. Even what Sylvia and her group are doing, look at the circuitous route they followed. Go here, go to Heinrich, go to Boell, go to who. You see,
go to agriculture, go to health.
Yes, exactly.
And I need just to reinforce what you've said, and we have started seeing it, which I think is a positive mark, and we appreciate at Heinrich Boell Foundation. You know, the PCPB is the regulatory body when it comes to issues of pesticides and the related products. And we have been pushing
Who's the
for...
PCPB?
Sorry?
The PCPB?
The Poisons Board.
Okay, there we go.
Anyway, something poison.
No, I'm talking of the regulatory authority or the body that regulates the use, the registration and the use of the pesticides in Kenya.
Yes.
We have been working with them. We have been pushing for
So that's the
withdrawal.
Poisons Board.
Yes,
The equivalent.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
okay.
yeah.
And we have been pushing for the withdrawal of some of the highly hazardous pesticides.
Sure.
And we are lucky actually in July, and we really want to acknowledge PCBB for that initiative because we were able to withdraw 7 products out of the market. And this will be on a phased out approach. Up to December 2024, this will be phased out in the market. And we want to really request them to continue this trend because we have over, like Sylvia said actually, that the kind of usage of these pesticides amounts to 76% usage by volume are highly hazardous pesticides, and only 2% are biopesticides that we can say are safe. So what we are amplifying is for the PCB to continue this initiative or with the withdrawal of these highly hazardous pesticides, and this comes to what you said, that kind of interlinkage within our agencies and the kind of work we are doing in this country will be supported by some such kind of initiatives. Coming back to the issue of Calro, yes, we have got some of these research that have been done, and I just want to echo these are top-notch kind of research that is being done. But does it resonate with our policymakers like yours? Are they amplifying this message? Because these are the spokespeople of the common mwananchi.
Right.
They are people who are hard. A scientist will go to the grassroots, will not be heard as much as the politician.
Okay.
So we need these kind of results, these kind of policies to be articulated in a manner that it will be embraced. These kind of policy issues will be embraced by our politicians, by our decision makers, by our grassroots opinion leaders, maybe even the church leaders, so that they can be able to get this message. Just to finish this is that we are going to have on the 11th and 12th of October, we are going to have Seed and Food Fair, whereby we are going to really amplify the management of our seeds, the indigenous seeds by our farmers, the kind of food people like Sylvia, safe food that they give us. They are going to be they will be showcased at the museums of Kenya. We're inviting the public and as many people to attend. These are some of the initiatives whereby the public can be educated. There will be kind of amplification of this message to the wider public in a very simple way, in a manner that they can be able to appreciate. They can be interact with these scientists, with this organization. Ministry of Agriculture, Calro will be attending, will be co-hosting this event with us. So let us, even our politicians, let them come. Let us hear what we are talking about.
We need politicians out of this discussion.
We need them.
No, we don't.
They are the ones who need to articulate this to the common mwananchi.
We actually don't.
Yes.
We don't.
Yeah.
Because,
yes.
Remember, they exist because we put them in those positions to articulate what it is that is of interest to us, something which they don't do very well.
But they can learn from us from such forums.
Now you've understood.
There you go.
You see, we have a situation that is inverse. The politicians should be following what we want them to do. if we amplify the politicians, then we will be following what they want us to do.
So they should come and listen what we are talking about, so they can be able to articulate.
If you come from an area where you are a progressive politician, thank God on your knees, and even fast if you can. Okay?
We throw this term around quite often, even as we talk about policy making and interventions for the future. But we throw the term organic around quite a lot, Sylvia.
Yeah.
And even looking at the growing of food and the eating of food, you just say, "Well, I eat organic." Okay, great.
Sounds bougie.
It sounds so bougie and grown and sexy and things like that. But what does it actually mean? If we say you're eating organic food, what does that mean?
So the simple definition is basically to say that you're eating food that has not been grown with synthetic inputs. So that means the pesticides, herbicides, all those, and food that has been grown, putting into consideration nature, and that's why we have upgraded even the definition to agroecology, because we're really wanting to, farm in a way that is able to support diversity. So it's not just having 100 acres of organic cabbages, but it's basically having, your cabbages that you've planted with beans, and you have some trees, and you have birds, and you have the bees, and you have different things that are really supporting nature. And also consuming also like the animals or meat that hasn't been injected with growth hormones, and avoiding the use of antibiotics unless the animals are unwell. So basically it's just eating safe, good food. Yeah.
Do we see that there is an appetite across from retailers to insist on organic food? Because that's also an intervention that I would see. Do we see that? To say that those who supply them, if it has not gone through these levels?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
And actually, I really wanted to bring that up. Like, who is driving the markets? Is it the producers or the consumers? And I actually feel that sometimes, I'm sorry to say, but sometimes we eat what we deserve, because what happens is that we are pushing to have nice, beautiful produce without any spot or blemish, and because of that, what farmers have done, they're putting in every effort and every input to make sure that that nice shiny tomato will get to you. And just know that this farmer, chances are, has two plots. They have the plot where they are growing their own food at home. They don't mind if it's going to be eaten by all the doo-doos and everything. And they have a plot that's going to this the market that is looking very nice
and shiny one.
Yes.
Exactly.
So what happens is that they're the ones who have demanded. Consumers are saying, my food should look like this. And I'm not saying that organic is selling poor quality food that is looking, like disheveled and terrible. I'm not saying that. But, if consumers would actually stand up and say, I want to know where my food comes from. If you come to my shop at Sylvia's Basket, I can give you the name and the place of every product and the farmer. I know each and every farmer that supplies us. We are really small. We are not able to supply many people. We have a very small family that is, few people who are getting from us. We are hoping to expand, through these forums and all that. But the thing about it is, consumers should ask, where has my food come from? Who has grown my food? And how did they grow it? And when consumers start asking those questions to all their mamambogas, you'll find the mamambogas will be asking their suppliers. And their suppliers will be going back and telling the farmers, watu hawataki chakula ya dawa. We don't want this food that is full of pesticides. Farmers will convert.
Is it possible to have food through the country that is pesticide, herbicide, what? Fungicide free?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
It is.
It is large scale.
It is. But consumers have to start. We have to start that movement. People have to start saying. And even you have to make a choice not to eat that food. And even, the thing about it, we are a very small group, as you said, of few farmers here working in a silo. It's true. But the thing about it, if more people would demand for that good food, then you're going to actually push the demand to the farmers. The farmers now will be like, we have to change our ways. And then, because the thing about it, when you buy safe organic produce, you actually make more farmers grow safe organic produce. You encourage them. So it's us to push it all the way back to production.
That people are having the conversation, because the word in Kiswahili kienyeji that often pops up, and so we know that there's the thinking fundamentally where people understand, look, something that was usually it's something that was homegrown, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you would take your scraps from the kitchen and feed your chicken,
exactly,
isn't it? That goes on quite a lot.
Yeah.
Is that fundamentally sound in what we're talking about, that you would have compost. I mean, I saw there's a women's group who have compost their worms, and it drips water.
I know,
and
yeah, worm juice. Worm juice.
Then they throw it into the farm, and the maize is, fantastic. It doesn't have problems. Fundamentally, in our minds, like CT started off at the beginning, there's that idea that, we can grow food, and the things around us we can use to, make sure that it's healthy. Mm-hmm. There's a push towards reintroducing, or at least mainstreaming, that idea. And how can we continue to harness that and use it today?
I think also we have to showcase, because seeing is believing. We have some very good examples of large-scale farmers who are actually, who have shown and actually grown really good food, like on a large scale, and be able to expose farmers and have those concepts, out there, so that people can actually be able to see it. But sometimes, these stories are not out there, and that's why we need to have platforms where the stories are actually told and people can actually see. But it's actually possible. Like, let me give a very quick example. I went to Kitale. There's a place called Manor House, and they've been doing large-scale research on actually growing safe maize on hundreds and hundreds of acres. It's happening and it's working. But those stories are not out there. We don't know about it. But we need to amplify those stories and actually showcase, the success stories that have worked. But it is possible.
But
without a doubt,
who the real fight is with?
Yeah, tell me.
Because these fertilizers don't walk from wherever they walk from to come to Kenya.
No, they don't. Exactly.
Okay, they don't volunteer to come to Kenya. Now, so long as big pharma, big interests, big business is involved, and the influence is big, I think you are right in your approach, in that you are going to the consumer, because that is the only bulwark you have against. Because if the buying public actually approve of your product,
demands,
that's it.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's true.
Harun?
And I just want to come in. Thanks. I want to come in on that element of what do we do to create that demand. I've always been talking about, and I said earlier here, about even our curriculum for our extension officers in agriculture.
Right.
Let's align it to the concepts of the day and the practice. What Sylvia is doing, what Manor House is doing. It's happening. Why can't we tailor our curriculum so that the graduates we are producing, both from our TVET institutions, our mid-level colleges, our universities, it is not a curriculum that was adopted in 60s but being developed or being aligned to the current conventional or industrial agriculture. This has to change. It has to change. Secondly, our frontline extension workers need to be supported in a manner that they should be able to embrace agroecology practices or principles and practices, and also be able to convey these messages in a manner that farmers can be able to understand. We have seen what Sylvia is doing with her farmers. We have seen other networks of farmers who are practicing. Can we have that kind of extension, agriculture extension? The other one, like we recommended in this report, is about capacity building and knowledge exchange. When you talk about agroecology, is about local exchange of knowledge. Okay. There's that kind of work within a cluster. Let's see farmers how they can share this knowledge and exchange, so that at the end of it, we have said it's about 80% of farmers who give us food in this country. So these are the farmers who can be able to do this in small way and give us food. And so to answer your question, it's possible. It's possible. Because if we are getting 80% of our food from small-scale farmers, these are farmers who Sylvia is working with, other people are working, and they are doing it. You can be talked to. Exactly. And they can be able to exchange this knowledge within themselves, within their cluster areas. Let's try and support. This is what Sylvia we are doing with her at Heinrich Boell Foundation. She's working in a cluster, working with small-scale farmers around her, and actually she ends up creating market for them because they can be able to offload their food.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Harun Warui and Sylvia Kuria, thank you for being here this morning. I mean, of course, now more tempted every time you buy a vegetable to ask yourself, where did this come from? Yeah. And then encouraging conversations where we can be safe in terms of what we eat on a daily. It will be interesting to see if by the end of the year that the Poisons Board will refuse some of these insecticides, herbicides,
we hope so,
fungicides, and all the other sides.
Sure.
Indeed.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.